In the dimly lit corners of museums, private collections, and even in the recesses of ordinary homes, there exist relics of the supernatural, items said to be haunted, cursed, or possessed by malevolent forces. Welcome to part 2 of a journey exploring some of the most famous haunted and cursed objects in the world. The Curse of the Pharaohs, also known as the Mummy's Curse, stands as one of the most notorious supernatural warnings worldwide. It dictates that anyone disturbing the final resting places of mummies, especially pharaohs, will be subject to a curse, leading to misfortune, illness, or death. Occasional occurrences of authentic ancient curses have been documented inside or on the facade of tombs, most commonly found in the private tombs of the Old Kingdom era. For instance, the tomb of Tutankhaten, 6th dynasty, bears an inscription. "As for all men who shall enter this my tomb, impure, there will be judgment, an end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him." Curses following the Old Kingdom era are less frequent but often more severe, occasionally invoking the wrath of Thoth or the vengeance of Sekhmet. The most famous of these mummies' curses is that of King Tutankhaten, more commonly recognized as King Tut. Despite widespread belief, no curse inscription was discovered within King Tut's burial chamber. Unveiled in 1922 by British state-sanctioned looters, Howard Carter and George Herbert, the belief in a curse gained widespread attention following the deaths of several members of Howard Carter's team and other prominent visitors to the tomb shortly thereafter. Renowned Egyptologist James Henry Breasted collaborated with Carter soon after the initial opening of the tomb. He recounted an eerie incident where Carter dispatched a messenger to his home, only for the messenger to report hearing a faint, almost human cry upon approaching the residence. Upon arrival, they discovered a cobra occupying the birdcage, symbolizing the Egyptian monarchy. Carter's canary had perished in its jaws, fueling local rumors of a curse. Arthur Weigall, a former Inspector General of Antiquities to the Egyptian government, interpreted this event as a sign of Carter's house being intruded upon by the royal cobra, akin to the symbol worn on the king's head to strike enemies, coinciding with the very day the king's tomb was unsealed. The incident was reported by the New York Times on December 22, 1922. The first casualty was Herbert, also known as Lord Carnarvon, the financier of the excavation, who perished on April 5, 1923, 4 months and 7 days after the tomb's opening due to an infected mosquito bite. After being bitten by a mosquito, he accidentally slashed the bite while shaving. The resulting infection led to blood poisoning, ultimately claiming his life. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, renowned as the creator of Sherlock Holmes and a spiritualist, proposed that Lord Carnarvon's demise was the result of elementals conjured by Tutankhamun's priests to safeguard the royal tomb. Other famous deaths include George J. Gould I, a visitor to the tomb, who passed away on May 16, 1923 in the French Riviera after developing a fever following his visit, and C. Mace, a member of Carter's excavation team, who died in April 1928, having suffered from pleurisy and pneumonia. However, research indicated that out of the 58 individuals present during the opening of the tomb and sarcophagus, only 8 passed away within the following 12 years. Howard Carter succumbed to lymphoma only in 1939 at the age of 64, 17 years after the opening of the tomb. Another cursed Egyptian artifact is known as the Unlucky Mummy, said to date back to the 10th century BCE. Unlike its namesake, it's not an actual mummy but the coffin lid of a priestess of the Egyptian deity Amenare. Sometime in the 1860s, 5 recent Oxford graduates took a trip to Egypt. Together they sailed down the Nile, a tourist attraction even then. To commemorate their trip, they bought a souvenir in the mummy pits of Deir el-Bahri, the unlucky mummy. On their way back from Egypt, 2 of the men died. A third went to Cairo and accidentally shot himself in the arm while quail hunting and had to have it amputated. Another member of the group, Arthur Wheeler, managed to make it back to England, only to lose his entire fortune gambling. He moved to America and lost his new fortune to both a flood and a fire. The coffin lid was then placed under the care of Wheeler's sister, who attempted to have it photographed in 1887. The photographer died, as did the porter. The man asked to translate the hieroglyphs on the lid committed suicide. In 1889, the unlucky mummy was moved to the British Museum, where it's officially known as Artifact 22542. In 1904, a young journalist named Bertram Fletcher Robinson published a front-page article in the Daily Express, called A Priestess of Death, about the allegedly haunted mummy. 3 years later, Robinson died suddenly of a fever, and his friends immediately thought of the mummy's curse. The list of stories about the mummy's influence began to grow longer, people who sketched the mummy having mysterious accidents, a lady falling down the stairs, a captain meeting financial ruin, a psychic claiming the mummy haunted him for weeks. There was a rumor that the mummy had been on the Titanic and caused the ship's deadly collision. One person claimed the mummy, at the peak of her wrath, had been presented to the Kaiser and caused the outbreak of World War I. Though some of these rumors are certainly outlandish and likely to be false, it's hard to argue with the long list of misfortunes that have been attributed to the unlucky mummy. The next object is another famous archaeological find, the legendary Ötzi the Iceman, one of the oldest and best-preserved corpses ever found. Dating back to 3300 BCE, he was discovered by two German hikers, Helmut and Erika Simon, in the Ötztal Alps, which cross Italy in Austria, at an altitude of 10,530 feet, in September 1991. Because of the presence of an arrowhead embedded in his left shoulder and various other wounds, researchers believe Ötzi was murdered. No fewer than 7 people involved with the expedition met untimely deaths, most of them within 1 year of the discovery, giving rise to the now infamous curse of the Iceman. Helmut, 67, was the first to die. He was caught in a freak blizzard almost exactly in the same spot where they discovered Ötzi and fell to his death. Within an hour of Simon's funeral, the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to find him, Dieter Warnecke, 45, died of a heart attack. Then in April 1992, archaeologist Konrad Spindler, 55, who first inspected the prehistoric corpse, died of complications from multiple sclerosis. Speaking about the curse, Spindler is on record as saying, "I think it's a load of rubbish. It is all a media hype. The next thing you will be saying I will be next." And indeed he was. The head of the forensic team examining Ötzi, Rainer Henn, 64, died in a car crash on the way to give a lecture about the Iceman. The mountaineer who led Henn to the Iceman's body, Kurt Fritz, 52, died in an avalanche, the only one of his party to be hit. And the man who filmed Ötzi's removal from his icy mountain grave, Austrian journalist Rainer Holzel, 47, died of a brain tumor. In 2005, the 7th and hopefully final victim passed away, a US-born molecular archaeologist, Tom Loy, 63, was found dead in his Brisbane home as he was finalizing a book about the Iceman. He suffered from a rare and incurable blood-related condition, diagnosed shortly after he became involved with the Iceman. The history of the Conjure Chest harks back 150 years to a vast plantation near Frankfort, Kentucky. Jacob Cooley, the plantation owner, tasked his African-American slave, Hosea, with crafting a chest for his firstborn. Despite Hosea's skilled workmanship, Cooley, dissatisfied, brutally beat his slave to death. In retaliation, Hosea's fellow slaves enlisted the help of a conjure man to ritually curse the chest with the blood of an owl. While Cooley himself seemed to escape its wrath, his descendants bore the brunt of its curse. Despite his disdain for the chest, Cooley placed it in his unborn child's room, only for the infant to perish shortly after birth. When the chest was moved to another son's room, he met his demise at the hands of a servant. The misfortunes and deaths afflicting the Cooley family associated with the Conjure Chest continued to mount, so that by the time it was inherited by Virginia Carey Hudson, there were already 10 victims. Though Mrs. Hudson initially dismissed tales of the curse as hearsay, she witnessed the addition of 6 more victims. Her first baby died, another child who contracted infantile paralysis, a daughter's husband running away, a son being stabbed in the hand, and a family friend being shot in a hunting accident. 16 victims, all of whom had one thing in common: some of their personal clothing had been placed in the Conjure Chest. Mrs. Hudson sought to end the curse and turned to an old friend, an African-American woman named Annie, who understood curses and conjures. The spell cast by Hosea's faithful companions would only be broken when 3 conditions were met. First, Mrs. Hudson needed to be given a dead owl without her having to ask for one. Second, the green leaves of a willow tree had to be boiled from sunup to sundown, with the dead owl kept in sight. Third, the boiled liquid was to be buried in a jug with its handle facing east, toward the rising sun, beneath a flowering bush. A stuffed owl given to Mrs. Hudson's son fulfilled the first requirement. The second and third conditions were swiftly met. Annie said they would only know if the curse had been broken if one of them died before the first full days of fall. Annie died in early September, the 17th and last known victim. The final private owner of the Conjure Chest was Mrs. Hudson's daughter, Virginia C. Main, who donated it to the Kentucky History Museum in 1976. Supposedly, the curse has been removed, but just to be safe, tucked securely in the top chest drawer is an envelope containing owl feathers. In the sprawling 60-room Belcourt Castle, located in Newport, Rhode Island, considered one of the most haunted residences in the United States, there are said to be a number of haunted antiques. Among these are the chairs situated in its ballroom, known as the Chairs of Belcourt Castle. Visitors frequently report feeling uneasy when near these chairs, with some describing encountering an unseen force that prevents them from sitting comfortably. Those who do manage to sit in the chairs often recount being inexplicably ejected from them. In addition to the haunted chairs, the ballroom also boasts a suit of armor that emits periodic screams, particularly notable in the month of March. According to lore, this was the month when the armor's former owner perished after a spear was thrust through the eye slit of the armor. In a previous video, I discussed how Myrtles Plantation is considered one of the most haunted places in the United States, featuring a mirror that is reputed to be one of the most haunted objects in the world, the Myrtles Plantation mirror. There are various versions of the story, but the core narrative involves a slave named Chloe who allegedly baked a cake laced with poison for the lady of the plantation and her 2 daughters. Supposedly, when they died in front of a mirror, their souls became trapped within it. Another version suggests that following this tragic event, all the mirrors in the house were covered, but one was accidentally left uncovered, leading to the entrapment of the souls. Visitors often report seeing handprints and claw marks on the glass. Additionally, there are long streaks that run down the mirror, resistant to any attempts at cleaning. Individuals who have gazed into the mirror for an extended period claim to have become ill or have fainted after witnessing what they described as the apparition of a sinister-looking woman.